I have to say, I never get tired of that new intro. Thank you, Canva. They don't sponsor this podcast, but however, they are responsible for our intro and everything for our live stream. So thank you, everybody, and welcome back to the Pixel Classroom podcast. Our little thing here with episode 213 for, of course, our discussion on passion, innovation, X Factor, enthusiasm, leadership, and in education. And believe it or not, I am fresh off of this incredible educator's person off to with his other better half here. They are an award-winning teacher and administrator for post-secondary level, co-founder of Jigsaw Learning, a co-author of the best-selling text Collaborative Responsive, the 3 foundational components of transferring how we respond to the needs of learning and currently working with districts and schools through the collaborative responses. And I have a lot on here. We just had a fun talk on his podcast, but I would like to welcome Kurtis Hewson to the Pixel Classroom. Welcome to us today, Kurtis.
Hi, Ryan. Great to be here. Thank you so much.
So, I gave you a little bit of introduction, but what was the story? What brought you into this education field? And what got us into the whole collaboration pieces here with the Jigsaw with you and Lorna, with your mission and step for right now, and especially being secondary education? Hey, high school teacher here, as you know, definitely want to hear the story.
All right. So I didn't know I was going to be a teacher. It wasn't on the docket growing up necessarily, but my mother was a teacher. I had firsthand experience what this looks like. And she also used to say, I had a really long apprenticeship or internship to become a principal because of the amount of time I spent in the office.
I hate to say it, a former assistant principal. That was her exact same word. You're in the office so much, you should just be a principal.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And so got into education, loved it. And it was always for me about, I want to make a difference for kids. And that's been the driving mantra from day one to where I'm at now. And what could I be doing that would make a difference for kids? It started with kids in my classroom, then kids in my school, and then teaching at the post-secondary level, teachers who'll be interacting with these kids, and schools and jurisdictions and ministries around that can make a difference for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of kids. Is about what can we do to support kids. And I believe the best way that we can do that, leverage that in a really effective way.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely incredible. I mean, it is, but I agree. I mean, one thing we were talking about in your own podcast here is about the collaboration, but also working for the more, natural pieces and what it deals and how that works with the collaboration, both with students and later also, staff, as we discussed too about that as well.
Yeah. Well, and like you had said too, in creating effective teamwork and collaboration in your own classroom, you have to work on it. You have to learn how to do that effectively. It takes small steps. I believe that also happens with staff in a school. We have to learn to work together. We have to be given opportunities and structures and processes. It doesn't just happen naturally across an entire school system. I believe that we set it up with some real intentionality, but through that, we unlock the best of each and every one of us. And like you said in our podcast, that idea that we're kind of pushing one another to continue to be better and better and better for what we can do for kids.
Yeah, and I mean, and it is that little push about being better for kids, as we've learned as well too. But you're right; it doesn't happen overnight. As much as we work with it, or we have expectations of, oh yeah, they'll get this right away. It's like, you sure? I mean, as much as you think. I mean, one thing that was always a big thing with me is I expect the students to have, oh, you've been doing keyboard since 4th grade, you should be able to type all these words and still starting to affect thing, or you should know how to upload this to Google Classroom. You've been using Google Classroom for 7 years, and they look at me like, no, well, what does it do this? It's like, whoa, wait a second. So, it's really interesting when we get to that part and everything about what actually leads to that and what is for collaboration. But I think it does. It's talking about starting small with it on that too. And that's actually always things me too. It's like, I think my biggest thing is trying to find out, where are you at? I mean, how have you yourself had to do that too? Because I know as much as Kurtis and Lorna here, we're got a good thing else, but I'm pretty sure as much as you love to have it, like, oh yes, bring us in, but you have to figure out where you're going to start with all this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny when you talk about the kids being able to say, well, I thought you knew how to do this. I think we do that with adults too, of sometimes just, well, you were in that PD 6 months ago. You should know how to do this in your room, right? Well, no, it takes time. It takes practice. It takes mastery, experiences. And how could we be doing that together through our conversations so that every day each of us is just growing just a little bit? We're engaging in professional learning all the time when we're collaborating, when we're hearing what's working for you. How could I address this? Here's an issue I'm having with this student. How would you respond to that? In lots of schools, in lots of places across North America and beyond, this happens informally in the hallways, in after school, but I would argue that a lot of that is driven by relational interactions, meaning you and I get along really great, Ryan. I'm going to go and reach out and ask for your thoughts or advice on this. But I want to get to a place in a school where the relationships aren't determining who's working together. It's what's in the best interest of kids, and who should I be connecting with on this? I might have to be chatting with someone that I don't necessarily see eye to eye on pedagogically. We don't teach the exact same way, but I could learn something from what they're doing and they could learn something from me. And let's try and set up some really intentional experiences for that to happen, not by accident, but by intentionality.
Right. I mean, one thing, I just had a mentor walk through where they came to my classroom and they teach math. And, I use math in consumer ed, but, how does math work into a leadership or a digital literacy class? And they really were coming in kind of getting that expertise. And I had to switch and go into it. And I went with our AP government teacher. First of all, maybe someday I will be teaching AP, most likely computer science, because that's where I just work very well with, unless we do marketing. If you're listening, Scott. Anyhow, but that was interesting too, is me going into that room and actually doing it. And yes, they were talking about government policies and areas, as well as how, things are determined by both not only elections, but also collaborative boards. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm listening to this part. I need to hear about collaborative boards and how that works and everything. And that was something that was nice to do, but she did it in a way where she just, not only worked with that, but she also, where she was working for that collaboration. There was a couple times, keep in mind, like I said, we're a couple weeks from the fall semester finally being over, hey, we're heading into 2026. But it was interesting seeing how some of that work she had to do with some of the collaboration with a couple ones. And she did do a shared slide. We talked about this with technology, but it was interesting how she said herself, like, you do know how to do this. Now, granted, we worked really hard getting there because I was expecting you guys to do X, Y, Z. We're doing this now. I'm expecting you to do this now, but we've done the work. And I think that was a really wonderful talk to do that. And then, like I said, the one mentor teacher that came and talked to me, she's like, I liked how you did that with the thinking dice. I liked how you did the chip discussion. I kind of want to do that for some of my collaborations and my math goals for kids that just don't know how to really work with it. So the fact that, we have similarities and everything, like I do consumer econ. So yes, there is math. There's, talking about, product and percentages. There is a collaboration between government policies and consumer response, but as well as, understanding where people work for policies and how policies work. But we did learn something from each other. And I mean, granted, I have a good relationship with those two people, but at the one time I walked into this one class and it's our yearbook teacher, and he looked at me like, what are you doing here? I was like, I want to see how you run. Why do you want to be in here? Like, you're using tech. I want to see how it runs. Okay, sit over there. And but later on he said, I got a question about you. How did you do this one time with that one class? I did this way. But it was good. I mean, we have a good relationship, but it was definitely two teachers. Like, he's watching, like, well, you teach this. How would we, what are you trying to learn from me? And later we did collaborate on something that worked very well.
Well, and you've really hinged on something that's central to the work that we do, is coming with that understanding that in every school that we have to see ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I mean the adults in the building, regardless of what your role is, your subject area. If I'm a paraprofessional, if I'm a leader, if I'm a classroom teacher, whatever that is, we have to see ourselves in wearing two hats at the same time. One of expert. I have something that I know works for kids, for my subject area. I have expertise, regardless of what role I'm playing in the school, but I also have to see myself as a learner. I don't know everything. And how could any one of us? And what could I pick up from you that would help me grow? And what can you take from me that could help you grow or challenge your thinking or just look at something a little bit differently? Again, I think if we can set up intentional structures and processes for that to happen in a school, not by accident or by you just one day deciding, hey, I'd like to go see this teacher, but that it happens on purpose and that it's not just and of course, we want the informal collaboration like you're talking about. What I've found is when we formalize the collaboration, the informal collaboration even becomes stronger.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. I mean, it's like one thing health I had talked about you too and on your podcast where I got to actually sub for a special ed and it was really good. And I know these students too, but there was a very interesting collaboration that really worked with us where I was taking it because I even told them like, some of my early STEM work, I worked with a lot of special ed and life skills students. So it was kind of a nice little crossover, but we weren't doing it. And the aides in there knew who I was, but then the way they saw I got into it, I got the students into it. I mean, we were doing Gundam style, one of the Dance Revolutions for their OT and they were like, when I finish my certification, I want to be you, Dr. Reed. I'm like, okay, but I want your energy. I'm like, okay, now that you can't do on overnight. That's going to take your own passion on that too. But it was a nice little collaboration. That's what led us to them talking about some motor skills and some things with perler beads because I didn't. They thought, that's a good idea. I think we should do that. A lot of these kids love doing that. I said, I think I would work good for their OT. I said, I'll work with your collaboration. I'll work with your department because I haven't been this very long. I've been doing this for 15 years, but I'm more than willing to say I'm more than do it, but it's nice that little calm thing. And here it was with our sped eds that worked really well with our aides to actually do that collaboration. They're like, yeah, I'd love to work with Ryan. What's he got? It's a nice little things where we wouldn't traditionally do something like that.
Yeah, and Ryan, it's interesting that you make that connection between our gen eds and our special ed is the schools that I work with, we sometimes see that there might not be the crossover, and in lots of schools there are, but some they're not, where from a general education side, I go, okay, there's this student, I'm going to hand them off to the special ed side of things because they have the expertise to be able to do this. No, we want it through what the framework we refer to as collaborative response is. These are all our kids. People are going to play different roles and use their expertise, but how can I bridge those two perspectives so that I could be sharing things that I've seen work in the classroom that would influence how we're addressing some of our students with more exceptional needs, while the special ed expertise is also being funneled towards us as well, so that we can, again, learn from one another. My experience, and when we first started this in my very first in the school where this work originated, oh boy, it's back in the mid 2000s. I'm really dating myself.
We're gonna go back, which gives me a big segue right now for us to do this here with for the live stream. Actually, hold on. Let's go up to down. There we go. There we go. I mean, people listening to audio is like, what is Ryan doing now? He had some little interruption at the beginning. I'm like, yeah, but live stream we get to have a little bit more fun here.
Yeah. So it was nearly 20 years ago where we said there's centuries of teaching experience and experience working with students in the school. How do we get it working effectively? How do we get people talking in real intentional situations? How do we get two people that in a normal day might not cross one another in the hallway? How do we create spaces where they will be together to be able to share expertise? So yeah, you're right there at jigsawlearning.ca.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I got that up right there. And those people didn't see it. There it is again. Voila. Oh, it covered us in the face. Put it back over. Let's put that on the bottom. There we go. I have way too much fun with this some days. But yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I really, like I said, I've been jigsawing for a while too myself for my own learning. I mean, one thing with my book, as I talked about in your podcast, I'm doing a lot of jigsaw. It's like I wrote this 15 years ago. I did this 5 years ago. Then I throw it into a little update. I clean it together, or I throw in a little AI. It's like, please clean up and remerge the story. So they kind of segue, and then I have to go through it. But there is a lot of the jigsaw working here too, and I really do like. You got a lot of things like the overview about here with the collaboration parts here, which worked really good. And of course, these are on a nice shared Google Drive doc, so you can really get into these pretty nice and make a copy if you're really interested. But you can really look at what like I said, I really like how what's established, what isn't established, and what is work with the breakdown, which is really nice. And I think that's really one thing I like about how this really works with it.
It's interesting too, Ryan, if you go up just a little bit, our collaborative response framework, we often refer to it with the term simplexity. Gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Kluger had coined this term.
Oh, yes.
That in a school, I believe there's really three foundational components. How do we set up collaborative structures and processes? How do we then utilize the data and evidence that we're collecting? And keep in mind, when we say data and evidence, it might be your lived experience. It's not just quantitative, it's qualitative. What do I know about our students, our classes, and that? And then the third component being, do we have it clearly articulated? What's our continuum of supports? What would we expect to see in classrooms as a response beyond the classroom? Getting it really clear. Those three pieces, really simple in design, highly complex to put together with fidelity within a school. It takes time, but You'll notice that blue puzzle piece is twice as large. I'm a big believer, and I've seen it over and over and over again. If we don't have intentional structures for the adults to be collaborating in the building, it doesn't matter what kind of data and evidence we have, how we're using it, or how we've tiered our responses in our continuum. The way people are working and interacting together really, really matters.
And I think it's very important and this has definitely been the message I know I've had from my last couple school districts, good or bad, is that they said themselves, they're not collaborating, they're not structuring it, then it's not going to matter. I mean, you can have all the quantitative or the regular data, you can have all the continuum of supports. I mean, sometimes you have school boards or community or parents that are just so into it, even the students themselves, and then sometimes they just don't collaborate right. And we see a lot of programs that fall apart versus the ones that do keep these structures. Definitely look at that structure and process are the ones that last longer or continue to last. I mean, there's some systems we have at my current school. They've been around for years. And the building I'm in is turning 15 years old next year. But some of these things they've done, especially for some of their innovations, some of the SELs, they've been around for years, long before the school was even built. And that shows right there some have come and gone. My last couple of schools, we had one that was there for many years. I think it was predating back when I was still in grade school in the 80s. And it's because they've had it, but they also restructured as time went on to keep that support for it. So even though the students changed, the teachers changed, the administration changed, the community changed, that structure and process was always there for collaboration.
Bingo. And what you're talking about is systems. Systems endure when people move and change, and you can always then tweak, refine, build upon the system. I often say in your collaborative response work, you're going to get to a place where somebody says, describe what it looks like, your systems in your building, and your response is grab a coffee. It's going to take a while for you to understand
exactly
how everything interacts with one another, but you create the system and then let good people do the work in the system.
Yeah, and I think that's always a thing. There's some people that are really willing to take it, and they're the good people, and there's ones that aren't prepared. Like, I'm going to hand this off to you, figure it out. I'm like, well, what? I'm going to do what now? And I mean, it's like one of my things here. I just, I put one of my things for one of our course changes. Like, I've done this between two other school districts. There is a plan for it. It's not going to change overnight, but there is a 2 to 3 years. I said the fastest I've done is 2 years. One, it took me 4 years. It is possible. It's staying. They said, well, okay, if you want to do this, we're willing to help, but we know you understand this and know how it's system. I said, yes. And that's it. But I said, I think these people know it too, because they're on the same page as me. And they said, yeah, we kind of agree with Ryan. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm like, but that's the collaboration process, because it's doing versus like the 6 of you or your department. Here's the new plan. Go forward. What now? Where am I going? It's like, and that's where I think a lot of these fail, no matter how good or small or inner city, rural or suburban. A lot of these communities, whether they're public or private, a lot of that gets lost when that's the mentality versus the collaboration to work with those people and keep those systems and supports going.
It's funny that you mention each one of those settings, because that's been our experience. Is as long as you can think through those 3 foundational components. I've seen rural schools with 3 staff members utilize the structures to work effectively together. And I've often heard schools say, we thought we were collaborating well, but we actually weren't. When we reflect back now, when we put some structure to it, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire. But then we've also seen schools of 3,500 students and 400 staff, where again, we set up the same structure. The scale is much bigger. Of course, the layers of team is more extensive, but the same principles apply.
Yeah, and I think that's really important too. Like, I mean, sad story, and I'll take this too. I mean, one of my former districts, we had an instructional coach. That was definitely what I is. I have my certification, and they worked within a system where they were this instructional coach. But then when they came to this district, they weren't doing what the instruction was. The collaboration wasn't there. The report wasn't there. They had the data, like, okay, yeah, see, these are, oh yeah, they do. But there was the collaboration, and they found out that what they were doing at that other school made them actually turn around, because unfortunately they left because they just like, I can't do this. And they've retired early. I mean, I understood. They thought they were there. They thought they were what an instructional coach was, be what the collaboration was, but was the fact that they were part of that system for almost 23 years. Yeah. They saw teachers go in and young teachers come in. So yes, the instructional collaboration worked because they were that tight-knit family. And then they went to another district to say, yeah, I'm going to do this. My family's here. This will be what I do and retire. And then they found out like but they don't have that relationship. They don't actually have the collaboration structures they have because they were built in a system, and then they couldn't migrate that. I shouldn't say they couldn't migrate that. They just expected it when they came to that school district, and it all fell apart for them. And it was, I mean, nobody said bad things. It's just they weren't ready for that. So then when that person retired and left, the next instructional coach of that looked at that collaboration, looked at that data, and it built that system. Even though they were a newer instructional coach and not part of that school district, it worked versus this other one which thought they knew what it was. And the truth was, it was more of like, well, yeah, they did, but you were a family. You didn't know, you couldn't bring those family values to the district versus here's the collaboration speech and you're working with it. Now we build it. We put it together, as you said, the jigsaw.
Yeah. And, Ryan, an analogy that I've always loved, it was shared with me as a young leader, but I really enjoy it. The idea that in our school or in our organizations, think about how do we set the banks of the river? We have to set banks of the river, but then don't try and micromanage the flow of the water. Let good people do work within those banks. But you know what happens if and when we have banks and we can direct all the water in a positive or in a consistent direction, man, that's powerful. There's a lot of power that can happen, but you don't try and micromanage the flow of the water. But without banks, the work goes all over.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to do it, because I've been in districts where we started, the banks were there, and then all of a sudden they, as they say, they put a dam in front of it, and then the water went this way. Or one person's like, well, I'm going to go make my own canal, and that messed that all up. And then all of a sudden it's 2 years later and they're right back to, luckily they've redone it, but it's like, you were fine a couple of years ago and you didn't collaborate. You just wanted to go in your own direction, or you wanted your own structure that just didn't fit that part of the puzzle versus, well, maybe I can collaborate and eventually the puzzle will, fit with the rest of the picture. And that unfortunately is it. And I've seen that happen many times. I've heard stories from friends. I've seen professional educators. My own aunt, 39 years as a teacher, she saw it happen a couple of times with that too. And she worked in 3 different states and 4 different districts, and that in her entire career, and raised 2 boys. And she said, we'd had years where it was great and other years where it's like, what was that? I don't know. I don't even know what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think if we can build the systems within it, then we still want to give everyone the autonomy to do the great work that they're able to do. But when we're doing it together, we reach a place of having that understanding that those aren't your students and my students, or your subject area and my subject area. These are our students. And I have some ideas that could help you. You have some ideas that could help me. And then how do we, from a school perspective, set up intentional times when we come together to share that it doesn't just happen, like I said before, accidentally. It's really intentional, and that's our work, is creating that framework in a school.
And I think that's perfect to talk about here, because you got some events to actually talk about this here. So, what do we got coming up on this course? I mean, you got some things here. You mentioned some other parts on that too. I mean, I've got the webpage right here for our live stream. People, the audio, it's all in the show notes here about going to the website. So go right ahead. So what do we have for events coming up for you? You got some fun and exciting. And honestly, I wish I could jump on a plane and come over to one of them right now.
Okay. Well, great news. You don't have to jump on a plane for the first one. If you go down a little bit, we are we're hosting a virtual summit on December 1st. And what that summit is we are going to describe what is collaborative response. And then we have 8 different schools or school jurisdictions that are going to come online and just share, this is what it looks like in our building. Here's how we've done it. And giving some really intentional or really clear examples, samples of what this looks like from many different perspectives. So definitely check out that summit. But then it leads into, every year we do an in-person retreat here. I'm in Alberta, Canada, and in our beautiful home here in Lacombe is the name of the community. We host an annual retreat, and at that retreat, we come together in a small group. We cap it at 140 people. And we have schools and divisional leaders that come in and share, this is what it looks like in our building. This is how we do it. And we create a really tight-knit network of schools that are learning from one another, jurisdictions that are learning from one another, and people that are coming from across North America. Last year, we had some Iceland colleagues that came.
That sounds cool. I was like,
yeah,
oh,
it was very cool.
Hey.
And so, yeah, it's interesting because I've had the chance to work in schools in Iceland, in Australia around this work, as well as other locations.
Iceland here. I gotta put my little virtual little sparkle there on
All
the live
right.
screen. There we go. Got Iceland. Got a little bit of the sparkle going. I guess I have too much fun here and it eats the internet.
What we find is the exact same thing is happening in all of these jurisdictions. Is we have students that are coming into our buildings with needs. We have resources are not infinite for us. We know that there's restrictions and resources that we have, but how do we leverage our most powerful asset? And to me, that's our people. And that's really the intention of a collaborative response. And we see the exact same concerns of how do we meet the needs of our students with the resources that we have. It's universal, regardless of the system that we're in, the jurisdiction, or even the country. So it's been really exciting at that retreat to have people talking with one another to say, here's what we've done, and being really really honest around here's the struggles we've had, here's the challenges that we've come up against when trying to create a collaborative response in our organization. And we create spaces where we learn from one another across the educational landscape, the same way we want to try and set it up within a school of how do we learn from one another, from hallway to hallway, from classroom to classroom.
Wow, I mean, it does. It sounds really occasion. I know I've been in Canada a very long time. My wife and I were just talking. Like, hey, you never know. Maybe we'll drop in. Maybe
the trip up and
you never know. You know, you'll be like, who's this strange guy and librarian that just came out of the Midwest? Like, who is this guy?
We will.
But no, it sounds
welcome you with open arms.
All right, I like the open arms. It works pretty good too. I'm also expecting some good food too as well. No.
That we can also make happen.
Oh wow! Well, Kurtis, this has been really it's got some amazing stuff and some. I mean, like I said, everything here with Jigsaw is just absolutely amazing. What you and Lorna do. I mean, it is. It's just absolutely creative for my neighbors up north here too. How can people get a hold of the two of you besides the the wonderful website? And I think you have a podcast yourself that I think I might have glanced at recently.
Oh, people need to check it out to have you. To hear you as a guest on ours. So we actually have two. We have Building a Culture of Collaboration, which you've joined us on, and we can't wait for the release of that episode. And then we also have another podcast, Leading Collaborative Response, and you can get them on all the different providers on YouTube. Just search those out. And you're right, the best way to get a hold of us is through the website, jigsawlearning.ca, and definitely check out jigsawlearning.ca/free. We have a number of free articles, webinars, different things that could help people start to understand this collaborative response work a little bit more. You also mentioned the book. Check out Collaborative Response. It's available through Amazon, published by Corwin. Great way to get an introduction into the work.
Yeah, I have to say, between your book and some other ones, like I said, I'm gonna have Brandy on here next episode. I think my 2026 book list has now went from there's these 3 books that now I got 9 books to buy now. Well, my wife's gonna go crazy. So, no, you're adding to that library. What do I do now? There goes our budget again. She just, I want to read the books. They give me the good ones. Oh man, this has been a fantastic time, and I also want to thank you for you and Lauren having me on your podcast here recently as well too. As we kind of did a crossover episode, it's kind of nice on that too, especially given our schedules. But no, I think too. Also, thanks for reaching out here too. And I was for the guests here for the Pixel Classroom, you've been a good inspiration for me. Definitely look at those old collaborations yourself. I'm going to hopefully be using a little bit of the collaboration learning myself here going into 2026 for one of my classes, because I might be teaching something next year. Knock on wood. Like I said, we want good vibes for the evaluation in a couple weeks. Good vibes.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, and the thing is, I know Lauren couldn't join us here for the episode versus on your podcast and everything, but I want to thank you again for being on here and being on the Pixel Classroom podcast this evening.
All right, it's been an absolute pleasure, and Ryan, wishing you the best as you. Boy, we're hurtling towards 2026 pretty quickly.
I know. I just had. I mean, my son's halfway through his freshman year. I mean, 3 years.
Wow.
And I gotta go get him too. I gotta teach him how to drive in a couple months. Oh boy. There goes my insurance, folks. There goes my insurance. But I love. Okay, Kurtis, thank you so much for being on the Pixel Classroom podcast. And everybody else there, we'll talk to you later.
Take care, everyone. you.